As Mets fans, all of our worst fears were realized on Tuesday night as the Braves put a beatdown on the Mets. Will this continue or can the Mets fight back? I'll talk about that more on today's show.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. This episode is brought to you by Booking.com, Booking.yeah. The right day can make you a fan of any city, even your rivals. Book today on Booking.com, the official accommodation partner of Major League Baseball. Get the Booking.com app today. And for those of you who are watching on YouTube, I decided to wear black today because, it's the Mets funeral. No, come on. Are we going there to start the show? Let's have some optimism. Let's put you on the therapy couch. Did that game suck? Yes, it did. That was brutal. Okay. And I can't remove myself from the emotions of a game like that. It was horrible. It was. I am trying to convince myself that this Mets team is still the one that we've all grown to believe in over the past 4 months that can rise to the occasion and beat the Atlanta Braves. But if you want evidence on the contrary, just go back and watch the entire game tonight. It was ugly. Here's the thing that's frustrating, because we could talk about it. I mean, Luis Severino just lost the pitching matchup. Spencer Schwellenbach was fantastic for the Braves again. I mean, he wasn't missing his spots. When the Mets did hit the ball hard, it was right at Braves fielders. It was just a night that was not going to go the Mets' way. But you really look at it, and the Braves had an edge to them in this game. And just like 2022, it did feel in some respects like the Mets were a little bit tight. Now, is that going to hold up throughout the rest of the series? In the next segment, I'll talk about why I think Francisco Lindor's return to the lineup could ease everybody into that game, and maybe the Mets can bounce back in this series. But this was just a game where the Braves big brothered you again, and it's so frustrating to watch it happen. For Luis Severino, just a bad start. But if you really look at what happened, he didn't get killed. Okay, first inning, he gives up a hit to Michael Harris and Matt Olson. Those are the two hitters in this series you got to watch out for, which is why in some respects I'm excited to see what David Peterson does against them with that left-on-left matchup. But those two guys get hits. It is a long, arduous inning for Severino, but he puts up a 0. Second inning, bottom half of the lineup, breeze. 1-2-3 inning for Sevy, strikes out the first two batters. Third inning, Orlando Arcia, the ninth batter, hits a dribbler. And Luis Severino, I think, would have made a great play to get him out at first. But Francisco Alvarez is too overeager, trying to make a play. He gets in Severino's way. Instead of being able to make a good throw to first, he gets bumped by Alvarez. Throw goes into the outfield past Pete Alonso's grasp. And Arcia standing on second base. Michael Harris comes up. First pitch, really tough cutter in, up, and he just gets bat on ball and rips it into the right field corner, double, and the Braves are up 1-0. And they really just sort of grabbed that momentum and carried it throughout that inning. Ozzie Albies finds a hole, doesn't hit the ball really hard, but gets a base hit all the same. Starling Marte, really bad decision, overthrows the cutoff man. You have no chance to get a guy with Harris's speed at the plate. Should have hit Pete Alonso on the cutoff. Maybe you get out of that inning, only giving up 2 runs. Instead, Ozzie Albies able to advance to second. He moves over to third on a soft ground ball off the bat of Marcelo Zuna. Matt Olson walks. Severino strikes out Jorge Soler. And then Ramon Laureano hits a nubber, that just finds some real estate where Pete Alonso is not able to get to it. Iglesias can't get to it. Ball with an exit velocity of 50-something miles per hour. And it's a hit that scores another run. Big 3-run inning for the Braves. And that was a pretty commanding lead. Michael Harris just killing the Mets in this one. 4th inning, hits a solo homer. 5th inning, Luis Angel Acuna hits a low line drive that you thought for sure was going to be a hit. Harris closed on it incredibly well, makes a diving catch, and really just single-handedly in a lot of ways won this game. Not single-handedly, because Spencer Schwellenbach on the other side obviously had a huge impact, but Harris just showed up as a man on a mission and he got the job done. I will say I hate Michael Harris after that game, as I'm sure a lot of you do. And the thing that was frustrating me more than anything is after every hit, the double, the home run, the catch, he kept shaking his head like they don't know me like that. I can't believe them and doubting us. We're the Atlanta Braves. I swear this team, like I can watch the Phillies, right? And I could say, yeah, I see how I would love that team. And I guess, look, if it's your team and you're a Braves fan, and you watch them and they have a game like this, you're going to love them. That's your team. But to me, the Braves are so much more hateable than the Phillies. I think the Phillies are obviously hated because they're the Mets rival, but I understand why there's a lot of other fan bases around the league that don't have a dog in the fight in October that sort of want to see that Phillies team win because it's a lot more lovable in a lot of ways. Like this Braves team has, I'm just going to say it, it's sort of unearned arrogance. And yeah, you say, Ryan, what are you talking about? Unearned arrogance. They're the Braves. They've won the division all these times. They were a World Series champion in 2021. What player on the Braves was a key figure on the 2021 team that won the World Series that's still there now? That was Dansby Swanson and Freddie Freeman's team. Acuna was out. Riley was there, but he's hurt right now. Travis d'Arnaud is on the team. Other than that, though, not a lot of the same faces. What has Michael Harris done? Yeah, they've won the division twice, but Michael Harris is 1 for 27 in his postseason career. And it's Michael Harris that, yes, got hurt this year, but's had a bad season up until September. So you're shaking in your head. They don't know me like that. I can't believe they're doubting us or whatever it is. They're doubting you because you've been bad this year as a team. And it's frustrating to me that they now get to be like, oh, yeah, we're the best. I can't believe anyone thought that we weren't going to make the playoffs. They don't know us like that. We know what you've been this year, which is bad. And yes, they've dealt with a lot of injuries. I get it. They lost Strider and Acuna. It's been brutal. Riley for long stretches, Harris for long stretches. I understand what they have endured. At the same time, they have the best bullpen in baseball, one of the best bullpens in baseball, and a rotation that even without Strider has been unbelievable this year. If they're guys who have been in the lineup like Olsen and Riley when he's been there, Harris when he's been there, if those guys outside of Marcelo Zuna had stepped up throughout the season, they'd be fighting with the Phillies right now. So that shaking the head nonsense, it just drove me up the wall. It's obviously because he was just beating the Mets. And so I'm just a sore loser in this, and I get that. And I'll own that bias 100%. But what makes them so cocky? What makes Brian Snitker come out before the season and talk about how the playoff system's unfair because they've lost in it? Why does Brian Snitker, after they clinched last year to get a playoff berth, why does he go up to Acuna and say, hey, this year you're finally going to get yours? Like, they just have this opinion of themselves. Like, they're the best team in baseball. And granted, in the regular season, a lot of times they have been. And they did win a World Series. But it's not a lot of the same guys. So I don't know. For some reason, that team just drives me nuts. And in this game, Michael Harris, the shaking the head thing, and then he talks after the game. I watched the press conference. I'm like, yeah, I can see why people love him. I get it. Like, I get it. If I was a Braves fan, would I love Michael Harris? Of course I would. But, man, I want the Mets to step up and beat this team, okay? Because it's just – I hate that the narrative plays out. I guess that's what it is, too. I went on the Just Baseball show this morning. Or I guess it was yesterday. It aired on Tuesday, but I went on yesterday on Monday morning to talk about this series and talk about what the Mets have done this year. And everybody doubts the New York Mets because that's the history. And it's frustrating when then everyone goes, oh, yeah, there's the Mets again. They're back. It erases everything, all the goodwill from 4 months of being the best team in baseball. And now, just by circumstance, you have to play the Braves in this series. And the best thing that could happen here for the irony, for the narrative, is for this series to get washed away by a hurricane. And you don't even know what is going to happen, or you have to play it out. And we'll talk about it in the final segment. The way the hurricane's impacting this is another frustrating aspect of this whole thing, because this could be the only game we see over the next couple days. You might have to sit with this feeling for a while. bottom line, the Mets just couldn't hit against Swellenbach, and Luis Severino got rocked a little bit. Marcell Ozuna hit a home run off Ryan Stanek. Other than that, the Mets bullpen held up, didn't give up any runs to give them a chance to get back in it. The only run the Mets scored, though, was a solo homer off the bat of Mark Vientos against Schwellenbach in the seventh. And it's just an ugly, ugly Mets loss. So the question is, can Francisco Lindor's return be a catalyst if they do play tomorrow that brings the Mets back into this series and allows them to shake all of this angst and just the past trauma and allow the New York Mets to show that throughout this season they have been the better team. They still are the better team, and they even up this series. They move back to 2 games ahead in this wild card race. And then if Thursday gets washed out, well, we'll see what happens beyond that. So let's talk about tomorrow in just a second. First, though, quick word from our sponsors. This episode of Locked On Mets is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.yeah. With summer travel heating up, especially for baseball games, it's time to explore those U.S. cities you've always secretly wanted to learn more about. Yes, we are talking about your rival cities. Maybe you fly out to, I don't know, Wisconsin, maybe head into Milwaukee. Check out Mets versus Brewers over the weekend. After this loss with the impending storm, it does not necessarily seem like the Mets will clinch in Atlanta, but they might just clinch in Milwaukee. If you want to be there, check out Booking.com because they'll show you hotels, bed and breakfasts, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more. And you might just find your perfect stay, even in your baseball rival city. The right stay can make you a fan of any U.S. city, even your rivals. Book today on Booking.com on the site or in the Booking.com app. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started as well with a $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Again, you're going to get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. You don't have to win that bet. It is guaranteed. That's FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. If you're an everyday listener to the show, make sure to become a Locked On Mets insider. This is our texting service where you get updates from me anytime news breaks in the Mets. You can ask me questions anytime. You can also take part in our Locked On Mets signed photo giveaways and get the live graphics sent to your phone each day so you know who's in the starting lineup without ever having to go on social media. If you want to be a Locked On Mets insider, find the link in the episode description. Go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. Now, Francisco Lindor is nearing a return. In fact, he could have played tonight. He was on deck in the 9th inning with 2 outs when Mark Vientos was up. He made the final out of the game, so Lindor did not get an at-bat. But that shows you that he is right there. He is ready to go. And I imagine we will see him in the starting lineup batting leadoff on Wednesday. Now, how did this all happen? Well, Francisco Lindor apparently stayed back on Monday to meet more doctors to get more scans done on his back. And they were looking at the bones. My assumption is they'd already looked at the muscles and the MRI that he already got. And so this was a different scan to get to just make sure there was nothing wrong with his bones. And again, what all of the scans have shown up to this point is no structural damage. There's nothing wrong with his back other than the pain that is still there that has not subsided. Now, maybe this is one of those things where Francisco Lindor had just completely taken off all activity for, a couple weeks, he'd be good. And maybe that's what happens in the offseason. But it is a pain tolerance thing. It is not something, according to what the doctors have told him and what we're learning, that would impact him or that could be re-injured by making a go at it. It's just a matter of what can he, sustain? What can he play through? And with that knowledge, here we see Francisco Lindor before the game, and actually even prior to that, everyone reacts so quickly to things. On social media today, there is a video of Lindor showing up to the ballpark and walking gingerly, slowly, whatever it is. Now, that could have been what happened, or that could have been Francisco Lindor walking with some swag into the game or into the tunnel. That could have been Francisco Lindor. Maybe he flew today and his back was a little bit sore from being on a flight and then traveling to the ballpark. So, yes, there was a little something there. Maybe he slept on the way over or just waking up. I don't know. But to react to a 7-second video of this guy walking and say he's done for the year, like some of you did, or to say there's no way he can play, well, you're going to look really foolish when An hour later, Francisco Lindor is running the bases at Truist Park full speed and takes batting practice from both sides. And there's people in the ballpark that said he was hitting balls into the chop house. So everyone reacts so quickly to these things, and yet we learn, he's actually getting close. So he was available off the bench. The opportunity didn't present itself. Okay, now we'll see what happens against Chris Sale on Wednesday. Is he the DH? Is he the starting shortstop? We'll find out. You would think in some respects that it would be better for him to just DH because he could get treatment in between at bats. That would be the less strenuous option. At the same time, the Mets are a better team when Francisco Lindor is at shortstop. And by playing shortstop, he could stay hot the whole game. That's what he's used to doing. Maybe his body just falls back into the rhythm of playing baseball and all works out for him. Who knows? But having Francisco Lindor batting leadoff, what that can do for this team mentally is just massive. Imagine this. First inning, Chris Sale's on the mound. Francisco Lindor comes up. He looks for a first pitch to hit, and he ambushes, and he rips a double into the left field corner. Imagine how that's going to charge up his team. Imagine if he hits one out or even just gets a base hit, whatever it is. Having Lindor's presence back in the lineup is massive for this team. And they have been a resilient bunch all year. Nobody thought they were going to beat Zach Wheeler on Sunday Night Baseball with Tyler McGill starting. Nobody. But they did. They made the decision to go with David Peterson instead of Jose Quintana. And I like that because look at Jose Quintana's splits this year, and he's not necessarily better against lefties than righties. I'd assume Peterson is. I should probably look this up real quick before I talk out of school. But what the Mets have indicated, as I talked about in yesterday's show, they believe in David Peterson's stuff more than Jose Quintana's. And why wouldn't you? He's 29 years old compared to Quintana, who's at the tail end of his career. He's a 6'6" lefty that clearly has better stuff than Jose Quintana. There's a question about that. Now, I'm pulling up the splits right now to prove my point here. And yes, he has been better against lefties than righties this year. Lefties are hitting just 230 against David Peterson with a 287 on base, 319 slug. Righties are hitting 260, 342 on base, 379 slug. So it's not like righties crush Peterson, but lefties definitely have a tougher time against him. That's because he can use that really good slider that he has. He can just attack them. And you look at the strikeouts, particularly strikeout per 9, 10.92 for David Peterson against lefties. Against righties, 6.08. Walks per 9, 1.82 against lefties. Walks per 9 against righties, 3.95. It's a drastic difference. He is far better against lefties than righties. And the reason why I point this out, the two hitters that scare me in this Braves lineup right now, it's Michael Harris, who has 8 home runs this month, and it's Matt Olson, who's getting on base at an absurd clip. Marcell Ozuna still playing well. Jorge Soler has definitely had his moments, but those guys can be pitched to. You can execute a game plan against them and get them out. If you are at your best, you will beat Marcell Ozuna and you will beat Jorge Soler right now. Michael Harris today, that first double that he hit, cutter up and in. That is a tough pitch, but he got to it and he hit a double. So in a lot of ways, I think this is a really good matchup for Peterson. I think it'd be a good matchup for Sean Manaea if this series does extend to the 3 games. You get to see them all. But bottom line, the New York Mets, if they do get to play this game, this is put up or shut up time. If you lose this game and then the next one gets rained out, how are you going to bounce back, come off the mat, and then beat the Brewers over the weekend? Or is this going to be yet another collapse? You want to avoid that. You got to just show up against the Braves and prove that you can play with them. Because I really don't think this Braves team is better than the Mets. I don't think this Braves team has a better chance at making a deep playoff run. But I think they have a mental edge, and the Mets have to clap back against that. Having Lindor in the lineup is a huge part of it. Seeing David Peterson go through the teeth of that Braves lineup early and not look like Severino did today, that would be huge too, because after that first inning, I had zero confidence that Sevy was going to be able to navigate the top of the lineup and not give up runs. And that's what we saw. The top of the lineup got him in the 3rd, and then Michael Harris got him in the 4th. So if David Peterson can make Michael Harris look ugly, strike him out, get to Olson's part of the lineup, strike him out, Then all of a sudden your team has some confidence. And we saw what David Peterson did with some tough lefties in Philadelphia's lineup as well to go through and put up, 7 scoreless before he got to that 8th inning. This is, sort of a testament to who the Mets have become this season, that the ball's in David Peterson's hands, and that's who you have to have faith in. But I do, and I want to see the Mets bounce back, have a great game. Hopefully they get to play it. That's what we're going to talk about next. Your wild card update as it relates to this storm that's coming through, because it does get very interesting. I want to explain all the implications in just a minute. First, though, another quick word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. Game Time has a new feature. It's called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live event even easier. Game Time Picks is going to filter out the fluff and only shows you incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. When I use Game Time, this is what I do. I wait till I'm about to get into the ballpark, and then I look up my tickets on Game Time. In 60 seconds, I can find a great deal. 2 taps, I'm all set. I got my tickets purchased, and they're sent right to my phone. And again, if you download the Game Time app and create an account, you can use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. What time is it? It's game time. Stay up to date with all the latest in the world of sports when you check out Locked On Sports Today, streaming 24/7 on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube today, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. Goal is to get to 10,000 subscribers by the end of the season, so I appreciate all of you who continue to subscribe. All right, so let's discuss this hurricane. There's been no word out of Major League Baseball about any plans to change up this series, which makes no sense because there's pretty much 100% likelihood of rain throughout the day on Thursday. Wednesday, you could see some rain as well. They're just hoping and praying that this is all going to work out. We saw something similar a couple years ago. And I looked today at an article I wrote for Just Baseball about that storm, what was going on at the time. And the cone, the hurricane tracker, it was eerily similar to what we're looking at now. And somehow that storm just hooked away from Atlanta, and they played that whole series without any issues. Now, if I remember more correctly, that series was supposed to sort of show up right at the beginning of the series between the Mets and the Braves. And it just never did. So now you're looking at a hurricane that might not arrive until, again, Thursday, in which case maybe the final game gets rained out. It would be very surprising if it gets played. So Major League Baseball would have to come up with another plan. But right now, we've heard nothing. I'm recording this right now. It's well past midnight. Still haven't seen anything. You would think if there was going to be a doubleheader played on Wednesday, we would have heard about it. Maybe the plan right now is to wait another day. Maybe they have their meteorologist and they feel very good about being able to play the game on Wednesday. So maybe the thought is, let's play this one. We'll get most of this series in. And then if it's possible to move up Thursday's game and play it, we'll do that. Or we'll get the Mets out of town, have them go to Milwaukee early, cancel that game, and just see what happens because it might not mean anything. That's where this gets really interesting because let's just say that, again, the Mets play on Wednesday and they win. Okay, cool. They got a 2-game lead in the Braves. The Diamondbacks are the interesting aspect of this race right now because they're in a little bit of a free fall. They've lost their first 2 games against the Giants in this series, leading up to a series where they're going to play the Padres. They lost 6-3 yesterday, 11-0 today. And the Giants have won 7 of their last 8 games. They're really relishing the spoiler role. They don't have a great pitcher on the mound for this upcoming game. It's going to be Mason Black, a rookie who has not had a lot of success going up against Zach Gallen, the Diamondbacks ace. So you would think they're going to win that game. But if the Giants beat the Diamondbacks again, and then the Diamondbacks had to play the Padres, there's a world where this gets to a point where the Mets and the Braves, if they handle their own business in their final series, for the Mets, it's against the Brewers, for the Royals, or for the Braves, it's against the Royals, then that game might not matter. Here's sort of the math on it. And one note I want to have here too. The Padres look like a real World Series contender, and they won against the Dodgers tonight in the most remarkable way you'll ever see. If you haven't caught the highlight, find it. What's the guy's name? Suarez. What's his first name? It's not Ranger Suarez. That's the Philly. Robert Suarez. Man, I'm better than this. Regardless, the Padres closers, it is Robert Suarez. Robert Suarez is on the mound against the Dodgers, and he's given up hits. I think it was 3 hits in the inning. So you have a situation where I think 1 run had already come across, and it was runners at first and second, Miguel Rojas up, Shohei Ohtani on deck. Ohtani's going to get an at-bat in this game, and there's no outs first and second. So the only way he doesn't get an at-bat is a triple play to end the game, and no one thinks that's going to happen, right? Miguel Rojas shows bunt on the first pitch, doesn't go with it. Then he's swinging away. He rips a ground ball to Manny Machado. Machado heads up, runs, touches third, shows off that big arm, fires at the second, beats the runner there. The return from Jake Cronenworth to first, and it is a triple play to end the game. And I know I probably should have made room for the Padres, but man, was that awesome to see. They now are just 2 games back of the Dodgers in the NL West. The Dodgers do have the tiebreaker, but there's 2 games left in this series. So in some ways, I actually think you should be rooting for the Padres right now, because the chance of the Padres falling out and the Mets getting that first wild card spot, it's just not realistic. But you want the Padres to have something to play for in that final series against the Diamondbacks. So let's just say the Padres sweep the Dodgers, and they're even going into the last weekend. I think the Padres are going to roll over the Diamondbacks, completely beat them up, and they might win the division. The Dodgers might be a wild card team. You might have a series against Shohei Ohtani and Mookie Betts and all those guys in the first round, which none of us are counting on or expecting. But that's what could happen here. So let's just say the Diamondbacks lose 3 of their final 4 games. They're currently sitting at 87 and 87 and 71. So if they lose 3 of their final 4 games, they will end the season at 88 and 74. The Mets are 1 win away from getting their 88th win. They have the tiebreaker over the Diamondbacks. The Braves are 2 wins away from getting their 88th win. So let's just say that happens. The Diamondbacks win their final game against the Giants, get swept by the Padres. If the Mets win, let's just say the Mets lose to the Braves. If the Mets win 1 game in Milwaukee, and the Braves win 1 more game against the Royals in that final series, they would be the 2 playoff teams at 88 wins, tying the Diamondbacks, but they both have the tiebreaker. D-backs would be out. So the Diamondbacks, in a lot of ways, have made this a situation where Major League Baseball could get let off the hook, because if they lose more games down the stretch here, because the Mets and the Braves both have that tiebreaker, if they just handle their end of it and win a couple games in that final series, Major League Baseball can just write off that last game and not worry about it. And maybe that's why they're doing it this way. Maybe they think that there's a good chance that that game won't hold any implications. If the Diamondbacks win 2 of their final 4 games, the number just moves to 89. The Mets would have to win 2 games against the Brewers, and they'd be in. And the Braves, they would have to win either all 3 games against the Royals. That would be assuming that the Mets had won that game that we might see on Wednesday. Or if the Braves won, they just have to win 2. And the Royals are in a free fall. They finally won a game tonight in extra innings on an error. They didn't score the whole game. Their offense has just completely fallen off a cliff. So this hurricane, it's just adding an extra layer of what the heck is going on to this series. And that is obviously frustrating, because you just wish the Major League Baseball would be proactive. They had a day today where they could have played a baseball game, or excuse me, they had a day yesterday where they could have played a baseball game on Monday and just changed the order around. They did not do that. They could have made a doubleheader for Wednesday to make sure that they got these games in. They didn't do that. They could have moved it to an alternate site. I don't think the Rangers are playing in Texas right now. I don't believe the Marlins are playing in Miami. I don't think so. Let me check that before I talk out of school. Yeah, no, they're in Minnesota. So they had a couple of domes they could have relocated this series to make sure you got the games in there, but they're just trusting that Wednesday's game is going to get played. And I think they're maybe assuming that Thursday's game might not, but they also could move it up to a day game. And if the forecast allows them to get it in, they'll get that final game in. So we'll see. We're going to know a lot more tomorrow about what happens here. If Wednesday's game gets rained out, it definitely makes things a lot more complicated, but I'm sure Major League Baseball is just hoping that the Diamondbacks keep losing and the Mets and Braves can get in. They'd prefer that for the TV numbers anyway when it comes to the postseason. So we'll see how this all ends up manifesting itself. It is a strange end to the season, but all the Mets can worry about is when they are put on the field to play a game, they show up to put their best foot forward. Tonight was a rough one, but I don't think it means the Mets are absolutely just going to get blown out with Chris Sale on the mound on Wednesday. I think they still have the hitters in this lineup to make the Cy Young sweat a little bit. I think David Peterson can surprise some people. You still have Jose Budo, did not pitch today. Obviously didn't pitch on Monday. Phil Maton, same thing. Edwin Diaz, Reed Garrett. Your best relievers are available. So if David Peterson looks like he's struggling with the top of the lineup, but he gets through them 2 times and they're about to get a third crack at him, you can shorten the game, go right to the bullpen, and hopefully the Mets can find their way to get a victory. I'll be back for tomorrow's show. No matter what happens, win, loss, or rain out, I'll give you an episode of Locked On Mets. So make sure if you are listening on the audio side, you follow, you rate, you review, wherever you get your podcast. Also want to thank you all. 2 days running, Locked On Mets has been number 4 in all of the Apple charts among baseball podcasts. So thank you all on the audio side for tuning into the show. If you're watching on YouTube, appreciate you guys as well. Want to get to 10,000 subscribers by the end of the season. We're inching closer and closer, so I appreciate all of you who continue to subscribe. You can follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. If you want to be Locked On Mets Insider, find a link in the episode description. Go to subtext.com/Locked On Mets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listener, your first watch every day. Not for your second watch. Head over to YouTube and check out the first ever 24/7 streaming channel. It covers everything, the world of sports. Talking about Locked On Sports today with our local hosts from each team, league-wide hosts from each league. Find Locked On Sports today streaming 24/7 on YouTube.